Hey guys, welcome back to another Tech Tip Tuesday. Today we're going to cover something a little bit more basic, but I definitely think it needs some attention, and that is the proper way to install a balancer on your engine. So, with the LS and the Coyote and everything making building relatively fast cars really easy, and with the internet and the age of how-tos and everything like that, people doing cam swaps and building these engines and stuff have created a lot of different ways of doing things. And at the same time, some of them can be good, bad, or otherwise. The last couple years, I've seen several injuries where balancers are breaking, they're coming apart, they're having issues with doing their job as a balancer or a dampener. I think there's a lot to be said and some light that needs to be shed on the topic of balancers. So there's a million ways you can skin a cat. I've seen guys use air hammers to push these on through the center. I've seen guys take blocks of wood and slam these on with a sledgehammer, especially with a stock balancer. Say you're not going racing or whatever, you don't necessarily need an aftermarket balancer. SFI balancers are great, but let's face it, a lot of people don't use them, even though they probably should. Some applications don't need them. And like I said, there's a million different ways to install them. So I've seen people, like I said, hit them on with a hammer. A lot of people will heat them up and shove them on. That can become an issue, especially with aftermarket balancers and also stock balancers, because you have materials in here that can melt, become brittle, and all of that with heating them up. And again, this stuff, a lot of guys will probably respond to this this video and say, I've always done it that way. That's great. My idea and my point of this Tech Tip Tuesday is to show you the safest, best way to do it, because when a balancer comes off, on track, in the burnout box, off track, it's catastrophic. It will tear your car up, it will hurt people near you, around the car, and that's simply what we're trying to avoid. With the factory balancers being cast steel, cast has impurities in it. It's just waiting to crack. It's really easy to break once it breaks, and when you're slamming on it, when you're heating it up and all this different stuff, and hitting it with air hammers and stuff like that, you're really just asking for issues, and that's what we're trying to avoid here. So I'll show you the tried and true method I use. So this tool, I think 25 companies make them at this point. It's simply a threaded piece. You can see it has tons of anti-seize on it. It's going to screw right into where your factory bolt is, and then it has a thrust bearing, so basically it won't gall up. And then you run the threaded piece into the engine as if you were putting a bolt in with the balancer on, and then you just crank it with this. And believe it or not, if you put a little bit of WD-40 or something like that on the balancer, it really cranks right on. And the reason why this is beneficial is because you're not hitting it, you're not having issues of breaking things, and you can actually feel if it does have resistance. So that's huge, because you can tell if things are right or wrong. And then also, once you get it on, you can really verify that you've bottomed things out. If you're heating things up and you're kind of struggling to put it on, you might not get the balancer all the way bottomed out, and then you're relying on the bolt to pull it the rest of the way in. A bolt is much different than a stud. For the same reason, as a stud is superior for bolting a head down, having those threads in the thing that's expensive, aka your crankshaft and hard to fix, and then running a nut down on that, you're then, instead of using the head of the bolt, you're using this thrust bearing to kind of take that force and allow you to rotate it and turn it on. It's just a much simpler way. You're not worrying about stripping bolts out, you're not worrying about stripping your crankshaft out, because let's face it, we see a ton of those. I see a lot of people who get them started and use a crank to pull them in, and then they pull the threads out and they're really upset. Even on a stock junkyard motor, if you strip out a crank, you're just in a world of hurt, and it becomes expensive in a hurry. And let's face it, you're always costing yourself time when you don't have time, when you're putting stuff together last minute. So get one of these for your toolbox. Like I said, there's 20 of them, 20 different companies that make them. I'm not sure who first started them. Add it to your toolbox. I think they're usually 40 or 50 bucks. And find yourself a safe, easy, effective, reliable way to pull a balancer on in doing so. Basically, the concept is, if you have a keyway, you're gonna obviously line that up ahead of time, get it started on there, and then you just screw this right in there. And like I said, when you screw this all the way in there, you don't risk pulling those threads out of the crankshaft. You're working off of all of the threads, and that's big. So then you're pushing on the machine center part, which is the strongest part of the balancer, versus the outside when you're banging it on or using heat and all that stuff. Essentially, you're putting it on the way it was made to be put on. And like I said, that makes it safer, because at these points in time, you need to start considering the people around you. Again, people will say, I've done it this way a million times. You have, but one of these times it's not going to end well for you or the people around you. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. A lawsuit is bad for the racetrack. It's bad for the people who get hurt, potentially injured, their families, and everything else. So be mindful, be thoughtful, make your life a little bit easier. Don't risk, tearing stuff up, and consider getting one of these tools. It'll make everything easier and a lot happier, and I think it'll just give you a little bit more peace of mind. If you guys like this video or have comments, by all means, I'm all ears. We can all learn from the comment section below, because there's a lot of great information, a lot of great mechanics and people in this industry. And it definitely, if you have ideas for the next Tech Tip Tuesday, also drop them below. That's how we got this idea. That's how we'll get the next one and the next one and the next one. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next time.